luckiest thing I used to think about him in our, when we were early married and then later, was whatever you were interested in, Jack got interested in. When I started to be interested in French furniture, he got so interested in it. And then he'd be so proud he'd go to Joe Alsop's and recognize Louis XVI or Louis XV. When I started to collect drawings, then he wanted to know about them. And he got interested in animals or horses. Or then when I was reading all this 18th century, he'd snatch a book from me and know all Louis XV's mistresses before I would. Mm-hmm. Which, so many of the senators, when we go out to dinner with senators and embassies this first year, all those men would ever talk to me about was themselves. Mm-hmm. And Jack was so interested, maybe it's Gemini or what. And once I asked him, the month before we were married in Newport, what he thought his best and his worst qualities were. And he thought his best quality was curiosity, which I think he was right. He thought his worst was irritability, but he was never irritable with me. I think by that he meant impatience or wanting, he didn't like to be bored, and if someone was boring me, pick up a newspaper. But he certainly wasn't irritable and to live with.
He had a great detachment about things because he had a great capacity to put himself in other people's positions and see what the problems were.
I always thought that of him. Maybe that's what makes some people, like Jim Burns, who never knew him, but said that he was detached and wondered if he had a heart. Well, of course he had the greatest heart, and when he cared. But he had this detachment. I always thought he would have been the greatest judge, because he could take any case. It could involve himself or me or something where with anyone else, your emotions would be so involved and look at it from all sides. I remember him speaking that way about General de Gaulle one time when everyone was so mad at General de Gaulle last year. Mm-hmm. I was so steamed up, and he was saying, no, and you must see his side, though he was nonetheless irritated.
Well, that's the extraordinary thing. There are those who always see the other people's side to such an extent it severs the nerve of action for themselves. It never did in his case. He could see the point. He understood the political urgencies that drove other people to doing mischievous things, but that he never prevented him from reacting to it.
Yeah, I wish I'd given him a wristwatch with a tape recorder in it or something, because if you could hear him explaining de Gaulle to me and what de Gaulle's objectives were and why he was so bitter, and his analysis of that man, de Gaulle was my hero when I sort of married Jack, and he really sunk down, because I think he was so full of spite, and that's what Jack never was. And he always would say, I suppose women are terribly emotional, and you want to never speak to anyone again who said something mean against your husband. But Jack would always say you must always leave the way open for conciliation. Everything changes so in politics. Your friends are your enemies next week and vice versa. So,
why was de Gaulle your hero?
He wasn't really my hero, but I sort of loved all that prose of some of his memoirs and thought this man who stayed away in the gloomy forest and came marching back.